few decades ago, when I started to come to a synagogue, when I started to attend a synagogue, I learned that whenever a Torah scroll is processed near you, you don't turn your back towards it, and you kiss it with your tzitzit, with the tassels of your talit. Then you read from the scroll. When you read from the scroll or have an aliyah, you touch the first word of the sugya with tzitzit and then kiss it. Only then you can read from the scroll. This rule worked in all synagogues, Orthodox, Masorti, Reform, until I came to the LJS. Here, I saw no processing of the scroll, no kissing your talit, no turning towards the door during Lichadodi on Friday nights, almost no bowing during services, and certainly no wearing kittel, the white robe on Yom Kippur, and most certainly no prostration to the ground on Yom Kippur. The question I asked myself then, and I still ask, is bowing and kissing just an aesthetic part of Judaism and a matter of taste? Or is it an essential part of what makes us Jewish? How much does the appearance of Judaism, the style of service, the style of music, what we do, what we don't do, affect its content and meaning? Or in the words of philosophy, what's the connection between ethics and aesthetics? Ethics and aesthetics are two branches of philosophy that deal with different aspects of human life. Ethics is connected with the question of what is good, what is bad, and how can I act morally and be a good person. Aesthetics is concerned with questions of what is beautiful, what's ugly, and how beauty can enhance our lives. In philosophy, ethics and aesthetics are not entirely separate domains. They can influence each other in many ways. For example, Nietzsche had a fascinating understanding of artistic creation. It is based on his concept of Apollonian and Dionysian schools or worlds. The Apollonian schools represent rational, orderly, and harmonious aspects of human nature, while the Dionysian represents the irrational, chaotic, passionate aspects, emotions. Nietzsche believed that artists or artistic creation needs to have a balance between these two forces, where the artist expresses their individuality and emotions, Dionysian world, through the structured and rational, the Apollonian form. An example of Nietzsche's artistic creation in modern life could be a musician who experiments with different genres and styles, breaking the rules of musical tradition and creating something new, original. Such musician would be expressing their vision, passion, and personality through their art. They take familiar genres as a base of their work, while also challenging their own views and the views and expectations and tastes of their audience. In other words, the two worlds can and should work in harmony and support each other's messages. Aesthetics is a vessel, but ethics is a content of this vessel. They need each other. In this week's Torah portion, we read about the perfect example of this teaching and cooperation between beauty and meaning, emotion and intelligence. There is a myth that Judaism only cares about what and not how, about actions and not thoughts, about content and not aesthetics. This is not true. In this week's parasha, we just read about the creation of Ner Tamid, the everlasting light that we still have, its beauty still enhances our synagogue. Its oil and the garments of the high priest. Let's begin with Ner Tamid and its oil. The life of the olive, rabbis explain, is hard. It dries and shrinks while still on the tree. Then it's cut down, crushed, ground, and pressed until it gives oil. So it is, the rabbis claim, with the history of the people of Israel. They have been beaten, chained, imprisoned, and surrounded by those threatening to crush them. Yet we have survived and produced many great achievements. In this parable, like the Ner Tamid, the everlasting light that burns forever, the Jewish people will survive forever, despite their persecutors. Other rabbis see the parable of Ner Tamid differently. God, they argue, needs Israel as a source of light in the world. It's like two people, rabbis say. Like, imagine two people walking in darkness. One blind, one can see. Without a light, they will stumble and possibly injure themselves. So the one who can see says to the one who is blind, "Hold this light, that I may see the path." Prophet Isaiah calls the people of Israel light unto the nations, or lagoim. This light is not just for us, but for all people. Ner Tamid, therefore, is a reminder to be that light. It's also a reminder that this light is not just for you alone, but for all people in the world. And whether you want it or not, others look at you as an example and oracle. Let's talk about clothes of the high priest. Uniforms. Uniforms are a symbol of identity. And we have many examples of them in our lives. Police, doctors, firefighters have unique and distinctive uniforms. It helps them to perform their duty, and it helps others to recognize them, sometimes to give way to professionals because they have a uniform. Aaron, the first high priest in Jewish history, had a very specific uniform too. His commandment to wear 8 different garments: the ephod, breastplate, urim vetumim, blue robe, fringed tunic, embroidered sash, linen headdress, and gold plate worn over the headdress. Each garment is to be made by artists out of the finest materials. Rabbi Hertz argues that these garments distinguished the priests from the lay Israelites and reminded him that even more than the layman, even more than the ordinary Israelite, he must make the ideal of holiness and constant guide of his life. So in other words, it's first of all a reminder to the high priest of his duties and responsibilities. You wear a uniform, you have to behave. People are looking at you, so please be an example. The higher you are, the more power you have, the more responsibility people expect of you. And therefore, the garments, the uniform, emphasizes it. Nehama Leibovitz sees the symbolism of the breastplate with its 12 stones, not as a reminder to Aaron of his responsibilities, but as a sign to the people's holiness. Aaron represented the entire people when he stood in worship. He and his garments, writes Leibovitz, were not an end in itself, but a means of stimulating the awareness and consciousness that Israel is holy. Remember that each stone has a name of a tribe, of one tribe. So it all represents the entire people. So summarize these reflections. Both Ner Tamid, the everlasting light, and garments of the high priest are unnecessary additions to the service. We don't need them to perform the duty. They are not required to perform Jewish worship. Nevertheless, we are commanded to have them. They are an additional extras that make Judaism beautiful, both beautiful aesthetically and beautiful intellectually, because we bring meaning to them. We fill them with meaning. We think, oh, what does this mean? And all these additional extras enhance our Jewish life. So later Jewish tradition has a special name for these extras, for this addition. It's called Hiddur Mitzvah, a concept that calls upon every Jew to enhance each duty with special enthusiasm, additional effort, and where appropriate, the highest quality of product affordable. For example, one performs Hiddur Mitzvah when one gives charity, not only generously, but in a way that it protects the feelings of the recipient. It's not, you can just give charity, and that's, of course, a good thing to do. But when you do it with the dignity of the recipient in mind, this is Hiddur Mitzvah. You go beyond what's required. The use of beautiful silver cup rather than an ordinary wine glass for Shabbat Kiddush is another example of Hiddur Mitzvah. Doing more than you have to, not stopping at the bare minimum, is Jewish principle. Editors of Torah commentary for our times of this book have an important observation. They write, all the attention given to the quality of the material from which the priestly garments were made, including every detail of their decoration, carries the message that valuable creations, whether sanctuary, worship service, sacred garments, or an object, are all the results of careful, patient, disciplined hours of artistic skill and work. They don't arise magically. They don't result from indifference, from laziness or neglect. Achieving excellence and beauty requires discipline, time, devotion, and much effort. The world stands on people who do more than is formally required of them. The LGS community is truly blessed by people like people who made this sanctuary the way it is. Our beautiful chairs is just one example of such approach. May this become an inspiration to all of us to choose and appoint leaders who are not satisfied with good enough, but those who try to achieve excellence and perfection, who perform Hiddur Mitzvah and do more than strictly necessary. Ethics and aesthetics from the content form and content are interconnected. What you see presented is a reflection of someone's values. A few days ago, you probably heard that 2 Jewish men were killed by terrorists near Palestinian town Hawara. In response, hundreds of Jewish settlers marched on Hawara. They burned cars and houses, and many Palestinian families had to be rescued in fear of their lives. 1 Palestinian man was killed, and more than 100 others were injured. A senior commander in Israeli army has described the violence by Israeli settlers as a pogrom. Very, very evocative term. Some people say that this is just an exception, just a bad luck of negative appearance of Israel in the media. Whether you think it was an exception or you think it's a new norm, this is not worthy of the title Or Legoim, light to the nations. This is a shame in front of all nations. You may think this is not about you, but these people wear kippah just like us. They read Torah, the same Torah, just like us. Therefore, we are responsible for each other. This week, they are on the news, not us. This week, they represent us. As a result of this, the board of deputies and people like our leaders of our synagogue, people like Mari van der Ziel, will have to fight even stronger anti-Semitism on university campuses. Instead of making sure that synagogues all over the world have chairs like this, people, our leaders, will have to issue statements that they don't want to issue, but they have to. They will have to explain to people around us that not all Jews are like them. This week, a large group of settlers, racists, performed their vision of Hiddur Mitzvah. They did more than it was required of them in their understanding of being religious and Zionist. Perhaps now is our turn. Now we must perform our understanding of what it means to be Jewish and Zionist. It is our turn to perform Hiddur Mitzvah and do more than we should in our understanding of what it means to be a religious person. Religious Zionism is not about violence. It's about coexistence. There must be a way, and while violence is not the answer. So may all our leaders remember that they represent the entire nation, and that wearing uniform comes with bearing the weight of responsibility. May all of us try to become the light to all nations, not just ourselves. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will.